airline giant Boeing is in the market for a new CEO. And that's because its current CEO, Dave Calhoun, is stepping down at the end of this year. This comes after Boeing has been plagued with a series of safety problems, and the most recent safety problem is likely the reason that Mr. Calhoun is stepping down. But this video isn't just about Mr. Calhoun and his resignation. It's about how Boeing got to the place where it's having a series of safety violations and how they're going to transition out of that place. So we're going to have a look at the history of Boeing. We're also going to touch on the death of a Boeing employee whistleblower. And then we're going to have a look at Boeing's future. Let's have a look. So in an article in ABC News entitled Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun to Step Down, ABC News reports that Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun will step down at the end of the year. The move comes amid fallout from a high-profile safety failure on board an Alaska Airlines flight in January when a door plug blew out of Boeing's 737 MAX 9 aircraft while the plane was in flight. Steve Mollenkopf, former CEO of chipmaker Qualcomm, will immediately take over as Boeing chair and lead the search for a new chief executive. Calhoun, who served as CEO for 4 years, began his tenure in the aftermath of a previous safety scandal. In 2019, Boeing 737 MAX aircraft were grounded worldwide following a pair of crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia that killed a combined 346 people. The aircraft were permitted to again take to the skies in 2021 following a 2-year ban. The renewed scrutiny over the incident aboard Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 on January 5th includes an investigation undertaken by a federal safety regulator and a criminal investigation by the Department of Justice. So, Boeing has this safety problem where a door plug blows out mid-flight. And now they're being investigated both by regulators and by the DOJ. And as a result, their CEO has actually had to appear before Congress to answer for Boeing safety issues. Now, there's one point in the article that I want to draw your attention to because we're going to come back to it. And that's right here. It says, Steve Mollenkopf, former CEO of chipmaker Qualcomm, will lead the search for a new chief executive. We're going to come back to Steve Mollenkopf later, so I want you to remember his name, and I want you to remember that he's the former CEO of chipmaker Qualcomm, because that's going to be important a little later. But for now, let's have a look at how Boeing came to this place.
Tonight, let's talk about Boeing. And let's start with the fact that Boeing used to be synonymous with quality and craftsmanship. It was founded by William Boeing in 1916, and over the years it built nearly 100,000 planes for the Allied forces, the first stage of the Saturn V rocket, and Air Force One. And the company's success rests heavily on its well-earned reputation for excellence. Boeing had such a great reputation for safety among pilots. There was even a common saying, if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And that stellar reputation has been credited to the company's engineer-centered, open culture. William Boeing himself once said, after noticing some shoddy workmanship on his production line, that he would close up shop rather than send out work of this kind.
Boeing was a household name, a name that was synonymous with safety and innovation. Unfortunately, based on what we've seen in recent years, somewhere along the way, that focus on safety shifted. Let's see how that happened.
A major announcement today in the world of aviation. Boeing and McDonnell Douglas today announced they would join together to form the world's largest aircraft manufacturer.
Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas, who were primarily known for military planes and had a lousy reputation for commercial airliners, most notably the DC-10, which had multiple accidents resulting in over 1,100 passenger fatalities. And while Boeing was the acquirer in the partnership, it soon became clear that the McDonnell Douglas culture, which was much more cutthroat and profit-driven, was going to become dominant. A year after the merger was finalized, Boeing announced a new stock buyback program, taking company money that could have gone to making planes and using it to inflate stock prices instead. And even mechanics at the company noticed the culture shift.
There was a major campaign launched called Share Value. And the idea was that they wanted everybody to be aware of the stock price, and they wanted everybody working together to increase the stock value. Even in the technical meetings, everything revolved around Boeing stock prices.
Apparently, Boeing's shift away from a focus on safety happened immediately after their merger, their acquisition of McDonnell Douglas, an airline company that didn't seem to really focus much on safety. And apparently, they've adopted McDonnell Douglas's strategy of focusing primarily on profits. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Focusing on profits is a laudable goal for a corporation. That's what corporations are for. They are designed to make profit for their shareholders. And what you're thinking is right. The problem is that the shareholders aren't the only stakeholders in these large billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar corporations. There are other stakeholders. Customers are one of the stakeholders. Employees are stakeholders. But the general public is also a stakeholder when it comes to these multi-billion-dollar corporations. The things that they do affect us, regardless of whether we're shareholders or not. Boeing, as one of these large multi-billion-dollar corporations, was essentially self-regulating. And that led to a place where they weren't even in control of their own supply chain. Now, the FAA was still kind of regulating them, but deregulation that was brought about largely due to Boeing lobbyists going to Washington and achieving deregulation meant that Boeing was being regulated by its own employees. So it had employees that were wearing dual hats. It was paying these people, but these people were the FAA inspectors. This failure on the part of the regulators and on the part of Boeing leads to things like planes crashing and door plugs blowing out mid-flight because bolts are missing or loose. And that leads to a situation where a CEO is at a loss to explain how these safety failures occurred.
How did an unsafe airplane fly in the first place?
Because a quality escape occurred.
Can you explain what that means? What is a quality escape?
I think that's the description of what people are finding in their inspections. Anything that could potentially contribute to an accident.
So, what now? Well, the truth is, Boeing's not going out of business anytime soon. It's one of just 2 major commercial airplane manufacturers in the world. So we don't need them to disappear. We need them to get better. The key question is, can they fundamentally change? And Boeing will say it knows that it's made mistakes in the past, but that under the leadership of their CEO, Dave Calhoun, Mr. Quality Escape, they are approaching the challenges they currently face with a new spirit of accountability and complete transparency. But it's really hard to trust that, given that Calhoun served on Boeing's board since 2009 through many of the worst decisions you've seen tonight.
And perhaps the fact that he served on Boeing's board since 2009 at least partially explains why he has to go now. And that brings us to the death of a whistleblower. In an article from Fox Business, it says Boeing whistleblower John Barrett was spied on, harassed by managers, lawsuit claims. Barnett was found dead in South Carolina earlier this month. The Boeing whistleblower, who was found dead earlier this month, claimed a manager at his former company spied on him, and he was harassed, denigrated, and humiliated for raising concerns about quality control issues, according to documents released by his attorneys. The Charleston County Coroner's Office told Fox News Digital that John Barnett, 62, died from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound on Saturday, March 9th. Prior to his death, Barnett was taking legal action against Boeing over actions he alleged led to his constructive discharge in March 2017 and was seeking damages including back pay, lost benefits, and emotional distress. The article goes on to say John M. Barrett, a long-term Boeing quality manager, alleges that throughout his 7-year tenure at Boeing, South Carolina, he made numerous ethics complaints about a deep-rooted and persistent culture of concealment at BSC, in which he and other quality personnel were pressured by Boeing upper management to violate Federal Aviation Administration standards and regulations, as well as Boeing's processes and procedures by not properly documenting and remedying defects. Barnett continually objected to Boeing creating and maintaining a program not approved by the FAA that allowed mechanics to inspect and approve their own work, known as the multifunction process performer. It also described how Barnett complained about countless instances where parts were being stolen from one airplane and installed on an incomplete airplane without any documentation, traceability, or engineering review, and how in June 2014 he submitted a complaint about another manager spying on him. Let's look at another article. This article is from CNN.com, and it says former whistleblower found dead from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. A statement provided to CNN by his lawyers says John was in the midst of a deposition in his whistleblower retaliation case, which finally was nearing the end. He was in very good spirits and really looking forward to putting this phase of his life behind him and moving on. We didn't see any indication he would take his own life. No one can believe it. We are all devastated. We need more information about what happened to John. The Charleston police need to investigate this fully and accurately and tell the public what they find out. No detail can be left unturned. His family told NPR the case was heading to trial in June, adding that Barnett was looking forward to having his day in court and hoped that it would force Boeing to change its culture. Let me explain to you for a moment how depositions work. So this man was in the midst of a deposition when he apparently took his own life. So depositions occur from day to day until they're complete. So sometimes you'll have a deposition that'll last a very small amount of time. But other times you'll have depositions that may last an entire week. And for that entire week, you have to come day after day after day and be asked questions. This man has been waiting since March of 2017 to tell his story on the record. He finally gets that chance. after they adjourn the deposition one day in order to pick it up the next, he apparently ends his own life. That doesn't really sound like something that a person would do after waiting all these years to tell their story. So his attorneys are calling for a full investigation, likely because they believe that there was some foul play. I'm not saying that there was foul play, but I am saying that if this person's allegations were true and they were going to go to trial against Boeing in June of this year, and this person was going to get on the stand and tell his story, and apparently have other current or former employees of Boeing telling the same story, Boeing has a vested interest in not seeing that case reach the public's eyes. Because Boeing already has safety violations for bolts being missing from door plugs. And this guy is saying that he told them before 2017 that as the quality inspector, he's noticing that parts are being taken off of some planes and put on other planes without any records. So, what does that have to do with this current CEO? Well, it looks like a lot of things are coming to a head for Boeing at the same time. So heads have to roll. And the head that obviously has to roll is the head at the top, because he's at the top. But I told you that we were going to talk about Boeing's future, where they go from here, because obviously there are safety issues that are prevalent at this company and have been prevalent for a long time. And it's those safety issues that now have to be addressed. Essentially, whoever's finding this CEO has to find somebody who's not going to be solely driven by the profit motive, who's going to be able to stand up to the board and say, no, we are not going solely after profits. We are putting safety first, because otherwise lives will be in danger. So, who is this person that is going to be looking for a CEO? Well, that, according to Boeing.com, is Stephen Mollenkopf. This is his executive biography. He's the former CEO of Qualcomm Incorporated, and he's been a Boeing director since 2020. Now, remember, the current CEO was a board member since 2009. So this person is newer and likely wasn't there for many of the issues that led Boeing to this place. So it's good, apparently, to have someone picking the CEO who wasn't a part of the decisions that went into creating this current safety situation. But let's keep going. Mr. Mollenkopf was president and COO of Qualcomm Incorporated from 2011 to 2013. He was the CEO-elect and president of Qualcomm Incorporated from 2013 to 2014. So understand this time frame here. He's COO, Chief Operating Officer, and president from starting in 2011. By 2013, he gets a promotion. It doesn't take effect immediately. He's just the CEO elect. But by 2014, he's the CEO, and he remains the CEO until 2021. Now, I also want you to notice that he's been a Boeing director since 2020, because when we're dealing with these large multinational corporations and even many smaller corporations, there's a whole lot of high-level executives who are on the boards of other corporations. So you may have a CEO of one company who sits on the board of 3 or 4 other companies. And while they're taking home their CEO salary or their COO salary, they're also getting stock options from all these other companies that they're sitting on the boards of. So ensuring that those stocks are gaining value becomes of utmost importance to them, because that's how they are being incentivized. So he was a Boeing director in 2020 while he was still CEO of Qualcomm, but he became COO in 2011. So why am I bringing this up? Well, according to the Europe's Antitrust Commission, the European Commission fined Qualcomm 997 million euros for abusing its market dominance in LTE baseband chipsets. Commissioner, I can't pronounce this name. The commissioner in charge of competition policy said Qualcomm illegally shut out rivals from the market for LTE baseband chipsets for over 5 years, thereby cementing its market dominance. Qualcomm paid billions of US dollars to a key customer, Apple, so that it would not buy from rivals. These payments were not just reductions in price, they were made on the condition that Apple would exclusively use Qualcomm's baseband chipsets in all its iPhones and iPads. This meant that no rival could effectively challenge Qualcomm in this market, no matter how good their products were. Qualcomm's behavior denied customers and other companies more choice and innovation, and this in a sector with a huge demand and potential for innovative technologies. This is illegal under EU antitrust rules, and why we have taken today's decision. So, Qualcomm at some point was engaged in anti-competitive behavior in violation of European Union law. They were fined 997 million euros for it, so almost €1 billion. When did this happen though? In 2011, Qualcomm signed an agreement with Apple, committing to make significant payments to Apple on condition that the company would exclusively use Qualcomm chipsets in its iPhone and iPad devices. In 2013, the term of the agreement was extended to the end of 2016. So in 2011, they signed the agreement, and in 2013, the term of the agreement was extended to the end of 2016. Mr. Mollenkopf was COO of Qualcomm from 2011 when this contract was initially signed until 2013. And 2013 is when the contract with Apple was renewed. So it was under Mr. Mollenkopf's purview, under his leadership, when the company was engaged in anti-competitive practices. Now, anti-competitive practices are designed to ensure that the company keeps increasing its profits without having to worry about competition. The profit motive. The profit motive led Qualcomm to do illegal stuff. And Mr. Mollenkopf was COO, and then when the contract was renewed, he was promoted to CEO. That's the guy who's going to be finding the new CEO for Boeing. Boeing needs to make a transition from being driven entirely by profit to being driven by safety with profit in mind. And they chose somebody who was running a company that broke the law in order to drive profit. So the question becomes, is Boeing headed in the right direction? Are the decision makers at Boeing doing this to put on a show for the public, or are they doing it to actually turn around the company and renew its old spirit of being a company known for safety and innovation? Truly, only time will tell, but it's not looking good. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is The Legal Good.